Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're going to take a look at two versions of the G3, specifically Burmese production versions. We have a BA63 or 64, we'll get into that, and we have a BA-72 carbine. The carbine to me is really cool because it's quite a bit different than a regular G3. So our story here goes back to, let's say, 1948, when Burma receives its independence from the British Empire. They start their own, form their own independent army, and they start looking for small arms. And specifically, they want to produce small arms domestically to have some self-sufficiency and some resilience in military supply. So the first gun that they actually set up for local manufacture is the BA-52. BA is Burmese army. And the BA-52 is bizarrely a copy of the Italian TZ-45 submachine gun, which is a rather kind of oddball, very late war, World War II Italian submachine gun. If you're interested in that, I have a video on the Italian version. I don't have a video on the Burmese one, but we do have the Italian. So I'll link to that in the description below. But in 1953, a German company by the name of Fritz Werner sets up a deal with both HK and Rheinmetall to bring both the G3 rifles and the MG3 machine guns to Burma. So this is the typical sort of deal where it involves initially a purchase of a large quantity of guns from the original manufacturers in Germany, followed by a license to set up domestic production. So I don't think they actually produced the MG3 in Burma, but they absolutely did produce the G3. So they initially purchased, the best number I have is 10,000 G3s. Starting about 1956, they get to work setting up the factory, and Fritz Werner is a German, machine tool company. They're setting up the factory on behalf of or for the Burmese army, and production gets started in the early 1960s. And there will ultimately be there are four versions of the G3 that the Burmese produce. There's the BA-63 in 1963, which is a standard, it's just a straight copy of a standard HK G3 rifle. There's the BA-64, which is the light machine gun version, which includes a carry handle and a bipod. Then there is the BA-72, which, as I said, that's the really interesting one to me. This is the carbine version, shortened for shorter stature Burmese soldiers. And then there's the BA-100, which is a designated marksman's version. So let's dive into these. These are both particularly crusty examples here, but we don't get to see Burmese small arms every day. So let's take a look at them. All right, we're going to start with the standard pattern rifle here, or sort of the standard, because this one isn't quite standard. If we take a look at the receiver here, this is actually marked BA64, along with the Burmese arsenal mark and serial number, of course. 64 is the light machine gun pattern. And you can see that there is a loop welded onto the top of the receiver here. This would have been for a carry handle. So I believe this was originally, in fact, one of the light machine gun versions. That's what the BA-64 was. But this one has been rebuilt as a standard pattern G3 rifle. So it doesn't have a heavy barrel, doesn't have the bipod on it anymore. Obviously, as you can see, this rifle saw a long and hard service life. It's pretty grungy still to this day. And I have no doubt that guns like this were rebuilt by the Burmese as necessary. So this is basically, with the exception of that guy right there, that's what the BA-63 would have looked like. Hopefully at some point I'll get my hands on an intact 64 so that I can show you that. Now, in addition, these have Burmese markings on the right side of the receiver, and they have Burmese selector marks instead of the original HK ones. And these still correlate to safe, semi-auto, and full auto. Now, the pattern of G3 that the Burmese got licensed to manufacture was actually a pretty darn early one, and you can see that from the rear sight here. This is the same style of two position. It's got a 200 meter and a 300 meter aperture. And this is the same style of sight that was on the very early HKs. You'll see this on the Portuguese Model 961s. They also used this style of rear sight. The front sight is a little different than a more typical, later standardized G3. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. Now, the BA-72 carbine is the really neat one to me, because this is the one where the Burmese took the existing G3 design that they had licensed, and they decided to shorten it to make it more specifically useful to their conditions. Of course, the Burmese had a bunch of soldiers who were relatively short-statured, especially compared to, say, some of the northern German soldiers around who the original G3 was probably designed. And so they cut down both the front and the back end. So the buttstock here was shortened about 35 millimeters, that's about 1.4 inches, and they also shortened the receiver at the same time at the back end. You can see where the standard G3 has 2 pins to attach the buttstock. This is rather more like, well, it's sort of like an MP5 or HK33 style where there's only 1 attachment pin, but if you look at where this pin is, it's this rear pin compared to the standard version, but it is right in front of the pistol grip, where on the standard gun, the pistol grip's out here a little further. So they took about 20 millimeters off of the receiver as well. Out at the front end, they took a bit more off. They shortened the barrel by 62 millimeters. That's like 2.4 inches. So the standard G3 barrel is 17.7 inches, or 450 millimeters, and they dropped that to 15.3 inches. That doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, but this BA-72 is really a much handier little carbine than the standard G3. You can see, of course, they shortened the handguard as well. They kept the same style of vent holes and gripping grooves in it. They just shrunk down the middle. So where the standard rifle has a big section, a big solid section right in the middle for your hand, they basically just got rid of that on the BA-72 carbine. We have the same rear sight here. It was 200 and 300 meters. On this one, the 200 meter aperture has been broken off of the rifle, but they didn't change the sight setup for the shorter guns. If we take a look at the receiver here, this one's marked BA-72. We have a different manufacturer factory mark. Serial number on this is A2167. Now it's interesting to note that this one has an SEF German style grip assembly, but it is matching serial number A167, same last 3 digits. So frankly, I have no idea exactly what that implies. If they decided to make some with English markings, if they were getting parts from Germany still, and then they just stamped their own serial numbers on them, not sure what this exactly implies. But it does have that same Burmese marking on the right side of the receiver. And there you go. There are your 2 Burmese G3s, a 64 sort of rebuilt as a standard 63 pattern, and the BA-62 carbines. The G3 pattern rifles would serve as the primary weapons for the Burmese military until the 1990s, when they adopted the MA-10 and MA-11 series of rifles, that is Myanmar Army. Burma became known as Myanmar. And those are 5.56 rifles. They're sort of a take on the HK33. So they stuck with the roller delay system. I suspect quite a lot of the G3 pattern guns are still actually in service. They have not been completely replaced by the newer pattern guns, but they're no longer the primary standard. So very cool to get a chance to take a look at these. That BA-72 is just such a cool take on a little, like a scale, not even scaled down, just a shortened G3 carbine without being a G3K. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.